be available for them to anchor. So it's like, when I do a demo in a group, I have an idea of who I'm going to do it with before I do it. It's not random. And I might say, but it's inevitable, it's going to come up in the conversation, maybe over the break before something's happened. So you can almost, when you think that way, and you think, I've had that conversation with that person, and they want to maintain a particular state. So even if you then go, who'd be a volunteer for this, and define what it is you want to. So in this case, in anchoring, I'm after somebody who would like a particular state that they do have, but they don't always have it in all the situations that they would wish, an emotional state. So you define what it is you're after. It's not like, would you like, mind you, if you said in India, could I have a volunteer, anybody put their hand up for anything without knowing what it is. But that's the parameter for choosing somebody. Now, if you've got that in your thinking and you've had a conversation with somebody, it's amazing how if you say, well, who'd volunteer, you get the person or the people that you had in mind. It's incredible how that happens because you're thinking that way. And it's worth, if you're not sure, I've just picked Tulsi, but if you're not sure, if people put hands up, rather than going, oh, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, go, what's your basis? Hear a bit about them so that you can then choose what you think would be the most. So you're choosing demo subject. Just thinking what the basis is. Obviously, it's real. This is current for you. How to access and how to maintain a provocative state. You don't necessarily want the most challenging. You might sometimes, if you want to know how to do a tricky demo. But I'd choose something that's got a pretty good chance of being straightforward initially, because the aim is to encourage people in the group to feel confident that they can do it, because they can. It's like, whereas if you make it too complex here, everything, you can't do that. So the principles, we're just going to do this kind of quickly. And I was thinking provocative, but is that it? Is that the stage? For example, you'd like to be able to access when you choose, and clearly you can demonstrate it. So we're actually going to use spatial anchoring a lot. Spatial anchoring means different places, for example on the floor or sitting, that are associated with different types of interaction. So there's an offline place, here we're talking about it, and I'm saying, what's the state that you'd like to be able to access? Let's say we're saying a provocative state, we're talking about it. Now, given that NLP is about experience, where's the place where we're going to study or access the experience? Now that's a different place, and I'm pointing to where it's likely to be. So, this is a classic circle of excellence. It's like, I'm suggesting it, so can you imagine a circle on the floor, for example, in front of you? Just be aware how you might change your voice for different places as well. So there's one voice for talking intellectually about stuff offline, and then there's another voice when you're starting to use a kind of hypnotic style, which encourages the person. Come back, Tracy. When you're encouraging the person to go into, I didn't mean for the hypnotic to send you off like that. Okay. And the lovely thing about, I think, this and many of the processes is that they can be done non-verbally. And it's a good way, if you find that you get drawn into the content, of actually avoiding content seduction. But it's very respectful, that you can do the processes without having to go into the content. That's the whole, it's about the process, it's about the structure, it's not about the content. So here is this circle, which you can make and imagine as attractive as you wish. Some people make it colourful, some people lights, but whatever, represents something attractive. And in a moment, I'm going to invite you to step into the circle. That's an embedded command using hypnotic language with embedded commands that say exactly what you want the person to do, to step into the circle. And as you do, which is hypnotic as well, and as you step into the circle, to really recall a time, which may be now, which may be recently, where you are in this provocative way of being, however that is for you. Just be aware of what this is like, and what you're experiencing, and what's happening around you. And it's very neutral language, so I'm not saying necessarily what you're seeing, hearing, happening. If I do say that, I say it in a throwaway way. Be aware of what you are seeing, hearing, happening, particularly what you are feeling. just what we're experiencing, whereabouts you experience that. And notice her non-verbal behaviour. And when you want to step back, you don't spend time, you don't have to do it for long. That's the whole idea of this. You just let it build, and in this state, and when you're doing a demo as a trainer, always keep the person in you. It's like you're keeping them with you. You know, sometimes I hold the person to say I'm with you, you know, even though I'm talking to the group. It's like you're doing both, you're managing the energy of both. So it can be quick. You want it to go to a point when it's building. You know, you don't want to keep the person there until it starts to tail away, for example, because the message is there's always more. You kind of access it to the point of the rise. That's when you anchor it as well. Now I'm going to assume that we've talked about making associations already. So we've talked about the fact we make associations in light, smells, touches, feelings, pictures, and so on. Okay, but let's just practice that. So step back into the circle to re-experience this way of being. So here you are, re-experiencing this and what's happening and what it's like to be in this way. All present tense language, ing type words because they've got a kind of flow to them. And maybe even intensify this or allow this to grow in a way that's appropriate for you, in a way that allows you to be this, whatever word you give it, but this or maybe provocative style. Okay, step back. How's that? I mean, you should know the answer by the non-verbal behaviour at this point. It's not like you need the person to tell you.
I felt more, second time I felt more.
You felt more? Wow.
I have goosebumps.
Goosebumps, great. So, this time, given that you are so able to step into this, notice how often using embedded commands that are in line with the outcome that you want to achieve. So given that you are so very skilled at being able to do this, I'd like you to choose an anchor, a physical anchor. The value of a physical anchor, it could be other things, but the value of a physical anchor is that you don't have to think about things when you do it. So for example, it's like having a shortcut on a computer. Use a touch, whereas if you used a visual thing, you'd have to be able to see it. That might take you away if you're in a conversation. So you can use those, but for the sake of this, for this purpose, we'll use a touch. So you choose a touch, which is very specific, which you wouldn't use in any other circumstances. Do you have one? Yes. What is it that you're going to do? Funny that you chose that one. I mean, I had suggested it, but you know. Okay, and that's something you wouldn't use in other circumstances. Like if somebody went like that and they often do twirl the ring, it wouldn't be appropriate to use it because it's already used for other situations. Okay, so just like that. So when you are in the circle, when you're accessing the state, and I'll give you a prompt to actually set the anchor, to use that anchor. So you're going to associate that touch with that way of being. Okay, so once again, just step into the circle, and as you step in, to re-experience as readily as you do this way of being, and be aware of what's happening, of what you're experiencing, of what this is like, and even allowing that to grow in the way that you have done, to intensify. And as you experience this, to anchor it, to use your anchor. Step back. And let go of the anchor. So that's key, that you anchor it on the rise. You anchor the state on the rise. So you can be telling people this. If you're training, you can be telling them these steps, you know, as you go along, and it helps sometimes to then write them up as well. Now the question is, how many times, you know, do I need to anchor something before I have it? The connection is wider, and who knows? You're a very fast learner, so let's just experiment with that one more time, so that you're going to be stepping in and experience it and anchoring it again. So ready, step in, and just re-accessing this way of being, present tense, hypnotic tone, keep the chat going, there is a flow to this, so you're experiencing this and intensifying. It almost doesn't matter, you can be almost saying rubbish, as long as it's got this flow to it and this person, because she's doing it, okay? And anchor this, and step back, and notice what's characteristic. Notice what's characteristic of the state. So you have to let go of the anchor when she's come out. So just like anchor it there. How's that? Beautiful. You are. So then the question is how to test this. And these are characteristic principles for most processes. You know, it's like, how do we know? How do you know if it works? The answer's in the experience. So ultimately, there'll be situations where you might want to be this way. You know, in life that happen today, tomorrow, later. Those haven't necessarily happened yet. So at this point, you can get an indicator. So, and a term that I will use is fire the anchor. Fire the anchor means use that touch that we've set up. So think of a situation, a typical scenario that may arise in the future. It's very likely to occur. One where you actually are sometimes challenged. This state that you've experienced here isn't a state that you'd necessarily naturally access, but you'd like to. You really like to. So think of a situation that may develop, may exist, that maybe you've experienced before, where you would like to have this way of being. Just think of a particular scenario. You have it. You can imagine what happens in this situation. And this is one. And fire the anchor. Okay. And what happened?
Entirely changed.
It entirely changed. Right. In what way? I don't need to know the content of that.
Like something happened in my mind, just vanished.
Your mind just vanished.
Just inside my mind, just vanished.
Wow. How's that?
Very nice, light.
Okay. So thank you. You can top it up. So whenever you experience this state, it's like top it up a bit. You know, you can use the anchor to do that, so that you have more of it. So that whenever you wish, you can use the anchor to access that way of being as a trigger for that. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tulsi. My pleasure. So, I'm giving the principles for the demo so that people can get what's going on. And it does help to have somebody you think can handle that too, you know, so to manage those things. Notice the final testing is done in the offline place as well. So it's like in offline moments now, can you use this anchor and get this and get the state? And the measure is you'll see and experience a change of state. I had one lady just stop the video.